Hey guys, welcome back to Anthony's Tennis Hub. My name's Anthony Hirsch, and today I want to talk about different ATP events going on. Events that happened last week, but especially events going on this week, such as events in Buenos Aires in Argentina, events such as Rotterdam going on as well as Delray Beach that's going on in Florida as well. So those are some events that I want to talk about. But first I want to talk about last week's events, just kind of catch up on what's kind of been going on, because I wasn't able to do a podcast last week, but there were some great events going on. So one of those was Marseille in France, where Ugo Humbert won the event, continuing off some of his incredible form that we saw last year. Ugo Humbert is a guy that I've constantly said has had everything going for him as a young player, outside of his win percentage, outside of actually winning, which is it's a big thing in tennis to actually be winning and find ways to win. It's actually a big thing to be able to cross that line, get that confidence, be able to know what it is to be in the habit of winning, and get that experience. So winning is actually very important, and Humbert, for whatever reason, just wasn't able to cross that line, and obviously parts of that is the mental game. But he's been able, he was losing very close matches all kind of the first half of last year, but then he really picked it up, won a title in the last week of the season, and now he's picked up a title in Marseille, beating Dimitrov, who you might as well say is like a top 10 player at this point in the final, very close to the top 10. And, he's just been playing just incredible winners, reigning all over the place off both wings, very complete, and he's a very exciting player. If he keeps playing like this, he should get to the top 10 because he's got everything that you want. Dimitrov was really out of gas after a match against Karim Khachanov, where I felt like Dimitrov never really played his best tennis, but he found a way through. Khachanov continuing a really kind of poor record against top 10 players, he basically didn't beat a top 10 guy for I think like 2 or 3 years straight. And, very poor nervy choices after being up 4-2 in the tiebreaker there, third set tiebreaker against Dimitrov, and very weird, wacky match there. A lot of net chords and different stuff going the way of Khachanov, which Dimitrov was very angry about, which makes sense. I would be as well. And, it was a weird, wacky match. Neither guy really played their best, but it was still a good, high-level match. And Dimitrov pulled through, but it was Ugo Humbert getting the best of Dimitrov, which Dimitrov and Humbert were really like the most informed players kind of outside the top 10 towards the end of last year. So really good tournament there, and it's good to see Ugo winning. It's going to be exciting to see how far he can go, because he's really one of the most informed players at the moment. I think he's like top 10 ELO, and he's just playing crazy. Just far fewer errors and just like kind of cheap, easy shots from his kind of end, and he's just solid and buckled down, and it's very good to see. It's very repeatable what he's been able to do now. Another one in the Dallas Open. Dallas was fantastic last year with Yibing Wu beating Isner. Isner's last final last year. Wu also beating Fritz there, who was the top seed last year. This year, it was also a lot of Americans. It was Tommy Paul beating Marcos Giron. It was actually the first All-American final since San Diego in 2022. And Tommy Paul is just like forever under the radar. People don't rate Tommy Paul, but he's one of the great athletes on the ATP Tour at the moment. Like, people don't put him up there with Gael Monfils or, with or Carlos Alcaraz. Like, nobody puts up Tommy Paul as one of the great athletes, but for me, he is. If we're talking honestly, I think Tommy Paul is in a lot of ways one of the best athletes on the tour. He's a great talent. He can hit a lot of very impressive, skillful shots. His forehand was working wonders. He's an all-court player. He's fun. He's not the biggest hitting guy around, but he's just an all-court kind of guy. And, he played well in that final. Paul kind of ran away with it in the end. Giron had a great tournament as well. Trying to remember who Giron beat in that tournament, but he's having a good week this week as well. Marcos Giron beating Mannarino 6-0, 6-7, 6-1 yesterday. So that's impressive in itself. But yeah, he beat Mannarino 6-1, 6-3. There's an even better one than that though in Dallas last week, where he beat Francis Tiafoe, who Tiafoe hasn't been playing that well, but he also beat Max Purcell, who was seeded. It's it's been a good run from him there. There was 3 close sets there in the final between Tommy Paul and Marcos Giron. Tommy Paul just getting the best of him. It was a good tournament there for Mr. Tommy Paul, who, he might be craving a top 10 spot. Tommy Paul might be looking at a top 10 spot. There's quite a few players that are playing right now that I could at least imagine kind of getting into the top 10 that I think we could be looking at a lot of new top 10 additions over the next 3, 4, 5 years in the sport. Whether it's a guy like Sebastian Corda, who I could easily imagine cracking the top 10, or a guy like Griekspoor, or Jarry, or Artur Feast, or Jack Draper, or, other guys like Ben Shelton, I could see cracking the top 10. There could be a lot of new top 10 additions. I think there have been 183 top 10 players in the history of the kind of ATP Tour rankings. I think we're going to see a lot more top 10 additions soon, because there's a lot of players like Ugo Humbert, who's also looking to crack the top 10. I'm going to be very interested to see how Tommy Paul does. I think he impressed me so much in Australia last year when he reached the semis. He even played a good match against Djokovic there. I expect him to, he hasn't reached his highest heights yet. Whether that's going to be in a big event this year or next year, I expect he could reach a final of some big event on hard courts. I like his potential on grass courts as well. He did win Roland Garros in juniors, so maybe he's the surface versatile American player that everybody's waiting for. But he is fantastic, and that was a great win for him to win Dallas, his first event since 2021. Well deserved with the improvements he's seen since then throughout 2022. Last year, one of the best hard court players, just barely couldn't do it in Acapulco after a lung buster versus Fritz in the semis there, and then ran out of gas against Dimonor, which has happened a few times, but didn't run out of gas this week, got it done against Marcos Giron, or last week I should say, got done, won Dallas. So Humbert and Paul were 2 of the title champions, and then also Darderi is, I believe his name is Luciano Darderi, Italian player. And, Luciano Darderi. And listen, this guy is so good. He's very solid from the baseline, kind of clay guy, but he can also be very explosive with just very explosive, good forehand, a good serve. He says he likes hard courts. I read up on him a little bit, and, I think he can do well on the hard courts as well. As 21-year-old, he had only won 1 ATP match, coming into the tournament. I believe this was only his 3rd ATP event. Comes through qualifying, which only makes it even harder to win 7 matches rather than just 5. And, come on, man. This kid wins the whole tournament. Very impressive run. So, okay, here's what his draw was exactly. So, Giannessi, an Italian guy, first round of qualifying. Then he beats Colarini. Then he beats, in the first round of the main draw, Barrios Vera in 3 sets. Then Sebastian Offner is a very good player. Been top 45, 6-3, 6-0. Then Yannick Hoffman he beats. Then Sebastian Baez, who won 3 titles, very good clay player. Then Facundo Bagnis in the final as well. Not only this, he becomes the first player of anybody since 2004 to win every match of a tournament, all 5 of his matches of a tournament, with either a bagel or a breadstick. This guy was playing dominant over some guys. Like I said, 6-3, 6-0 over Sebastian Offner. This guy's very impressive. The young Italian generation is so scary. It's kind of what Matteo Berrettini started up. He kind of showed, he paved the way for a lot of these guys to have the confidence that they can do this. Matteo Berrettini making semifinals pretty much at all of the majors, only outside of Roland Garros, but he's had good performances at Roland Garros too. Done well on all 3 surfaces. Wimbledon final, lost to Djokovic in a great 4-set match. So, he paved the way, and now we're seeing, obviously, Sinner by far the best of everybody. And then you have guys like Zapiri, Musetti, you have all of these different guys, and now you have Darderi, who's announced himself, and it's always good to have a new name kind of announce himself to the tour. And you always welcome new names. I think a new era where we have just so many young players that can win different titles, maybe even big titles, I think would be very good for tennis. I don't know necessarily that the next era has to be, 3 guys dominating in the same way that, Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic did for us to really enjoy the new era of tennis, however we view this new era of tennis, I think the new era could also be a lot of young guys being around and being able to win and earn big titles. And I think we can see that with a guy like Jack Draper. Like, yeah, he could win a couple Masters in a major. Corda, sure. Fritz, Hatchinoff. I like, the list goes on. Darderi, you have Morazan, you have Yibing Wu. You can just keep going with names that are exciting and talented, whether a guy like Yibing Wu or, Corda or whoever does or doesn't win titles. The more kind of stars and young stars we can have in a new era of just a lot of young, great players, I think it can make a really good era. So it won't necessarily be a dominance thing, but I think it will be a thing of, unpredictability, which I think can add a lot, even with so many people waiting on the next, Roger, Rafa, Novak. The truth is we will never have a big three that dominates to the level that we did again. We might have one player, even that I think would be very tough to have one player win 20 plus majors and, do all of this and all of that, but we're never going to have it where we have three guys, especially four guys with Murray, who also reached like 11 slam finals, which is about equal with, Agassi or whatever. It's like, we're not going to have that again. But what we might have again is more great eras, because tennis keeps going. I think that's just what it's going to be. And so different eras can be good in kind of their own right and their own ways. Maybe it was Sinner Alcaraz spearheading a great era with also Runa and, all of these players, Artur Fils, all of these players, and hopefully it makes a mishmash of a great era, and I'm sure the Sinner Alcaraz rivalry will by itself make a fantastic era in its own right. I'll have a video coming out, by the way, on the Sinner Alcaraz US Open match soon, and maybe also a little bit just about the rivalry in general, but especially kind of appreciating their US Open match, because I'll just tell you what, that's one of my favorite matches of all time. But anyway, just about Darderi, but it's good to have these young guys winning. That happened last week. Now I'm going to talk about this week. Okay, now for this week's events on the ATP Tour. So I love this part of the season. I'll just be honest. I love the Golden Swing. I love Rotterdam. I love Dubai. I love the indoor tournaments, and I just love this part of the season because it feels like Golden Swing is so disconnected from everything, but it just feels like it exists in its own kind of little bubble. One of my favorite things I heard somebody say about the Golden Swing is that it feels like the X-Men related to Marvel. It's like the X-Men has its own little universe that feels kind of disconnected from everything, but it's still part of everything in its own way. And that's what I feel like it is with the Golden Swing. It's like, you always have these different kind of clay guys, a lot of South American players playing in the Golden Swing, who you see their names throughout the whole year, whether it's a guy like Ramos Vinolas or Andujar, over the last 10 years, 15 years, or Batista Agut even, all of these guys. But then they're doing so well in these tournaments, and they can do well in other tournaments as well, especially a guy like Batista Agut. But it's exciting to see Alcaraz playing some of the Golden Swing events. He did that last year, I should say, as well. And also you have that, and then you have the indoor tournaments and outdoor hardcore tournaments, some happening in America, whether that's Dallas and Delray Beach. And then you have tournaments like Dubai and Rotterdam. Dubai, the original kind of Laver Cup, all black court aesthetic that is so kind of fun. I mean, it's not really all black, but the court aesthetic reminds me a little bit of it. I just love this part of the season with all the indoor tournaments happening, the quick indoor tournaments happening at the same time as the clay happening on the other side of the world, and there's so much tennis to follow, and it's a mishmash right in between Australian Open and the clay season, Indian Wells, Miami, but it's just under the radar, and it's fun, and it's possibly my favorite part of the whole season. I love it so much. But okay, so anyway, Rotterdam, here's what's kind of been happening so far. So Jannik Sinner took on Gil Monfils earlier today. Actually, as I'm recording this, I got to watch that match in full. It was a really kind of great shot-making contest. Two big talents going head-to-head. It really reminded me of their match in Canada. Monfils was very impressive. He's turning 38 in September, the start of September. I think his birthday is September 1st. He's turning 38, and man, is he still so impressive. And so good athletically, defensively. And, I just think that, Monfils' kind of defense, getting all of the balls back is something that can really something that can really annoy Sinner, I think, and also just the kind of variety and the different shots and looks he can throw at Sinner can hurt him. Also just the aggression that Monfils throws, because everybody thinks of Monfils and it's like trick shots, whatever, but it's also the game that Monfils has, the power that he has is so good if he could just dial down, and he showed that in this match. I mean, just the 4th set that Sinner has lost, and I don't know how many sets, in his 12 match win streak, this was the 12th win that he's had in a row. And, I think that Monfils, like in Canada, can really hurt him. Sinner did not really play his best match either. He had 13 winners to 15 unforced. It was pretty obvious if you're watching, to be honest. But Gale was very impressive. He had 21 winners and 14 unforced errors. But Sinner's shots, his drop shots, his slices, his net play when he was deciding to come to net wasn't really working very well. He was getting passed a lot. His drop shots were going really way up high, and Gale is so fast even now. His balls were falling a bit short off both wings. It was kind of a weird level for what we're used to, but it's so encouraging for me to say that because he still played fantastic. I mean, in my opinion, he still played like a top 15, top 10 player, absolutely. I mean, Yannick is amazing. Gale really just played incredible too. I mean, he was serving fantastic for the first 2 sets. His serve stats, if you're looking at the full match stats, definitely climbed down towards the end of the match, but at one point, he was serving over 70% of his first serves in, really hard, 69% of second serve points won. It was the 3rd set where his serve stats completely fell out the door, but he was serving fantastic in the first couple of sets. And, the variety was working way better for Gale. And yeah, it's just his variety, his power can trouble, and just getting so many balls back. Really feeling like Sinner needs to rush a little bit. A lot of his shots were going into the net. But it was great shot making and rallying. The match was a good watch though. When Gale broke in the 2nd set, he hit this just incredible kind of forehand acceleration shot off of a very neutral shot down the line, which Sinner I'm sure didn't expect. That's kind of skills that Monfils has. The best sign of how talented a player isn't actually usually in how well they can hit a between the leg shot or something like this, although obviously that's a side of great skill and racket skill, but what it often is, the best sign of talent is often how well a player can hit off a very neutral shot. That's still pretty difficult to like hit a great winner off of. That's really the best sign of talent, how well they can hit a neutral kind of ground stroke. And this was just an amazing kind of forehand down the line out of nowhere winner from Gale Monfils, and then Sinner kind of double faulted the game away, but still, I mean, Gale absolutely earned the 2nd set through and through. I think anybody watching really felt that way. Especially because Sinner wasn't at his top level, but still, Gale played crazy. So, shout out to Gale here in the 2nd set. And, a couple of stunning points also at 5-3. It was a backhand down the line pass, a very difficult one that got the crowd involved. And, then the 3rd set, he got at a quick kind of disadvantage in the set, like in the 1st set as well. He went down 0-3 in both sets. He still fought well. He was at 0-3 advantage. At 0-3 love 30, he made the 3rd set relatively close. He was also down match point at 2-5, so like we're used to with Gale, he fought well to the end, and he shows what he's made of. But yeah, Sinner with a solid win. And Sinner versus Raonic, by the way. Raonic beat Bublik, who just took a title, and also De Jong in straight sets. And Sinner versus Raonic, I mean, I'll tell you what, Raonic is dangerous. He beat Tiafoe last year in Toronto. And also, he's just a dangerous guy who's always underrated, under the radar. I really hope Raonic, one of my biggest, wishes for this season is that Raonic has a really big result, I have to say, because he's so under the radar still, despite of how good of a player he was. I think he's definitely the definition of underrated, and he's just never in that conversation. I think even Nishikori, a guy like Nishikori, gets brought up a little bit more. Nishikori obviously more flashy, and, people always rate the mental side of Nishikori with how his 5-set record as well, even though I think a lot of his 5-set matches probably shouldn't have went 5 sets even, but still very impressive from Nishikori all the same. I mean, he's a great player, fantastic. Is K. But I think with Milos though, I just think his win percentage is better than Nishikori's, for example, but it's also just very high. It's about equal with Tsitsipas's. It's at 68%. I think just under at 67.8%. which is very high for for your win rate of how often you're winning as opposed to when you're losing. And that's a very big stat in tennis overall, even though it doesn't really differentiate between Grand Slams and ATP 250s, 500s. But, he was always losing to the top guys. That's shown in his kind of finals record, where basically the finals he lost to were always to the big three, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, if not to Murray. So anyway, Raonic shout out, because he's a great player, constantly injured when he was trying to get to his best. And he was constantly improving too, adding stuff. Net play's forehand was amazing. He had an amazing forehand. And that's his good speed, pretty good speed moving around the court, and an all-time good serve, literally all-time good serve. I think he has the 5th highest ace rate of any player ever. So shout out to Raonic, but Sinner's probably going to be too tough. Sinner's looking for his 200th ATP match win. And also, if Sinner gets to the final, then he'll be number 3 in the world, I think, in 2 weeks. If Sinner wins, he'll be number 3 in the world this week, but it doesn't really matter. He'll be number 3 in the world, shall he get to the final. And he's got a good draw ahead of him, I'll tell you what. I think it's Ruusuvuori and Raonic standing in his way. Yeah, Ruusuvuori, Griekspoor, and Raonic. So whoever wins Griekspoor, Ruusuvuori. And Griekspoor and Sinner had a pretty close match here in Rotterdam, actually in the semis last year. Griekspoor seems to always pick up his level. It's crazy. Griekspoor always picks up his level in Rotterdam. But he got awesome wins over Musetti and Hurkacz. Great comeback wins against Musetti. And very similar scorelines in both. 3rd set tiebreaker in both of those. Griekspoor's been fighting amazing all year. He came back from 2 sets to love done against Safulin in Australian Open. I'm just waiting for him to do better at the big events, but he's an underrated player. I think he's 27 years old. He did amazing at Challengers. Now he's risen up to the ATP Tour, and he's one of these guys that I really hope keeps rising up and keeps doing better, because I call him Talon the Talent. Talon Griekspoor the Talent. And because he's just so talented, man. He's so skillful. And he's such a fun watch. One of the most underrated watches on the tour. So if you get a chance to watch Griekspoor this week, I highly recommend it. And he's having a hell of a run. He seems to always pick it up at Rotterdam. It's like Fritz and Indian Wells. It's like their home events, and they always seem to just absolutely pick it up to their best. So shout out to Griekspoor. But yeah, Griekspoor standing in the way of Sinner, world number 3 as well. Also, Felix losing very close match to Rublev. It was sad, to be honest, because it was sad, but it was also encouraging. And Felix wrote on Twitter something that is why I'm so forever high on Felix, and why I think he should be having good results. Because he said, you know what? I'm taking the positives out this week. It's very encouraging, and I'm hungrier than ever to share what I've got in one of these matches. And it would have been very easy to not think that way. I mean, if he had 2 performances at this level, where after he played like this, he still lost, then I think having 2 or 3 of those and losing, he would have already been like, man, this is tough. But it was so, I think it must have been so invigorating and encouraging for him to have his best performance since 2022. I think universally, a lot of people watch this match have celebrated that this is the best performance he's had since his 16-match win streak as like a 22, 23-year-old in 2022. This is the best level he's brought out. His backhand was good too. I mean, everything was on. His serve was amazing. He was hitting, he was constant depth of shot. He was like a top 10 level player out there for real. And top 10 level Felix Auger-Aliassime. He was number 6 in the world at one point. So we hope he gets it back. He seems to like playing in Rotterdam. He's won here before. He's made a final here in 2020 as well. And even last year, he lost to Medvedev in a close match. Lost to Rublev with 3 match points. Also was 2 points away in the tiebreaker. Hit a few bad errors, let the tiebreaker go. It's all mental. If he can just get the consistency working, I mean, he played a great match against Rublev. So it was very sad to see him kind of lose it. But if I can find the stats here, because I'm sure it will show just such great stats towards the side of Felix here. If I could find it. But he really played a phenomenal match. Also, it kind of reminded me of Medvedev, his match against Medvedev in Australia. Where in Australia, he played a phenomenal match. He was match point up on Medvedev. One of the best performances I've seen from Felix. Even his backhand was working, return of serve, everything. He was hitting consistently deep. Great rallying, all court, great. Not just the serve, but all court, his net skills as well. And he still lost it in a very close match. And now it's to Rublev. who just stole the match away in very quick games at the end. Kind of reminded me of Sinner Djokovic Davis Cup, where it was 4-5, love 40, and then Rublev saves match points, and then he runs away with it. I think the gingers of the tour are really wreaking havoc on these on these guys who are trying to do well. But so Felix's stats here: he served 64% of his first serves in, 20 aces to just 5 from Rublev. He won 80% of his first serve points. He won 49% of his second serve points. 42 winners to 22 unforced. Rublev 22 winners to 12 unforced. So Rublev played pretty well too, but 42 winners, 22 unforced errors, and he lost the match. Actually reminded me of Paris, where Rublev lost to Djokovic, even though I thought Rublev had the best performance I've seen in his career. And he lost to Djokovic, but yeah, sad for FAA, who just barely couldn't quite cross that line. But those are some of the things going on in Rotterdam. Sinner seems like a big favorite, especially because Hurkacz did lose to Talon Griekspoor, but it's going to be interesting how the tournament kind of unfolds from here. I think De Minaur is still in the tournament. De Minaur and Rublev, I think, are on the other side, but those are two guys that Sinner just loves facing, and they both look great. They played a great match in Australia as well. An awesome match where De Minaur just pulled out 2 tiebreaker sets in the second set and the third set. He really had set points throughout the third set in that match in Australia, but he managed to close it out with an incredible shot in the third set tiebreaker, and then it was very close, but De Minaur up 2-1. Rublev managed to kind of close out the fourth set, and De Minaur just ran out of gas towards the end of the fourth set, and then the fifth set just ran out of legs. But it took all he got against Rublev, who's just so kind of mentally solid with it. There's so many sensational rallies there, defense versus offense, bringing out the whole scope and kind of completeness of each other's games, and just some sensational rallies, very dynamic kind of rallies there. So I hope we see a lot of the same things in Rotterdam tomorrow as well. But moving on from Rotterdam, where it does seem like Jannik has a good chance, but Rublev's playing well too. But moving on from Rotterdam, I'd like to go over to Delray Beach, where, not that much interesting has happened so far, but there are a few things going on where, Fritz is in the hunt. He's going to play Hijikata in the quarterfinals. He's eyeing something big in the rankings. I believe he is just outside the ATP top 10 rankings, but he can climb back in. And I'll tell you what, there's something very interesting going on with ATP top 10 rankings. Then I'll talk about Delray Beach and also Buenos Aires real quick to kind of finish off. But what's going on in the ATP rankings? So another player in Rotterdam who's playing in Rotterdam, Dimitrov, who really is one of the biggest potential tests for Sinner in Rotterdam. Dimitrov is on the other side as well. And, Dimitrov's been playing great. He's number 13 in the world. Fritz is number 12. De Minaur is number 10 in the world, right? So in the live rankings. This is the live rankings. De Minaur has already cemented a top 10 spot in the rankings next week, assuming that Fritz and Dimitrov don't go super deep and reach the final or win their tournaments. So, but here's the deal. So, there has never been a top 10 in the ATP rankings that hasn't featured a one-handed backhand player. Tsitsipas has been in the top 10 since 2019. He's held the mantle for a long time, really since Federer kind of dropped out of the top 10. And he's held the mantle for that one-handed backhand in the top 10. But Tsitsipas is in big danger of falling out of the top 10. So here's what happens. Tsitsipas is going to fall out of the top 10 for the first time since early 2019, I think February or March of 2019. First time, if Fritz beats Hijikata, which is likely, that Taylor Fritz beats Hijikata. Other one is if Alex De Minaur beats Rublev. So, De Minaur beats Rublev, less likely, but also very, very possible. Then Steph is out. But also, the one-handed backhand can survive. If Grigor wins Rotterdam, he's guaranteed. And if he makes the final, I think it's more so depending on De Minaur and Fritz, but also pretty much guaranteed. I think De Minaur and Fritz both would have to win their titles, if even that. Pretty much if Dimitrov wins the final or wins Rotterdam, gets to the final or wins in Rotterdam, then he will enter the top 10. So it could be a moment where Tsitsipas exits the top 10 and Dimitrov enters the top 10. Dimitrov hasn't been in the top 10 for so many years, like 6 years, and Tsitsipas has been top 10 for 5 consecutive years. So that would be a crazy moment. So big things to look out for in the top 10. But yeah, Fritz is playing in the Delray Beach Open. He won this. He's defending champion. He won this last year. Paul fought through Alex Michelsen, who is very close to beating Tommy Paul. Michelsen is exciting to me. I know he's still a bit of a messy player, and sometimes can struggle mentally, but he's so new. I've seen this time and time again. He's such a new player. Some of these guys who struggle the most, when they figure it out, they really figure it out. Because listen, I mean, they're here in the top 100, top 50 in the world for a reason. They're so high level. They work hard. Once they figure out kind of all the things that are kind of in their way and really they're forced to focus in on all the things they're struggling with. Once they focus in and kind of carve those things out and perfect them, they can get to such high level. And his problem really is he has too many tools. He's like a Carlos Alcaraz. He's got too many tools. You look at him, you think he's a big server. He's really very kind of a complete player with weird, kind of messy, skillful kind of shots, slice and dice. You really never know what shot to expect from him, but he's one of these young guys, like, he's so talented. He can redirect shots beautifully, and yes, he can hit weird shots and weird shot selection, and doesn't always look great out there, but, you know, you don't always have to look great out there to end up being a great player. Often it actually is that way, where you can struggle a lot. So I'm excited about Michelsen. I think he's got a lot of tools in the toolbox. It's just going to be about when to use which tool. But Paul, fantastic, coming off of Dallas. He's also just a great all-court player. Neither guy the biggest hitting guy around, but he fought through, also an all-court player. And Giron, again, beating Manarino, bageling Manarino in the first set, but it was actually a much tougher match this time around than it was in Dallas. But he also beats Manarino. It's going to be interesting to see where Giron goes from here and if he can sustain it, because I think the thing about Marcos Giron, a lot of the time his game feels a little bit kind of not all or nothing, but it feels like very low percentage and hard to sustain. So we're just going to see how Marcos Giron sustains it. But I made a video about American players. If you want to check it out, I'll put it below my head. But, it's going to be interesting to see how all these Americans do. I like Michelsen. Sebastian Korda is a guy. I hope we see him playing a lot more. And Tommy Paul, I'm furthering my ceiling higher and higher for him because he's been impressive. And he's another guy that has a bit of a low percentage game, but he's impressed me. And Taylor Fritz is a guy that I've been high on for a long time. Some people have not have disagreed with how high I am on Fritz, but I was saying that he can win hardcourt Masters even before he won Indian Wells. So that's just something that I think I'm high on Fritz, and I hope that he can keep kind of proving me right there. And if he can climb back to the top 5, we'll see. But but there are struggles. He struggles with the backhand as well, consistently week in, week out, match in, match out, and net play. He's got ways to improve for sure. And even off, being able to hit from the back of the court with these other top guys who are so good coming up, Alcaraz, Sinner, Medvedev, Djokovic. So it's going to be tough for these Americans to really break through to that way, and really be a big slam contender or something like this. We'll see who can do it. Ben Shelton is a name who it seems like with some time, he should get there with his talent levels, his athleticism, his serve. But we'll see what all happens. But American tennis is interesting. And then last thing I want to talk about is Buenos Aires on the clay courts. These events aren't finished yet. If I get a chance to catch some interesting matches at any of these events or the final, then I'll probably drop them on maybe Sunday, Monday, right after the matches air. This is a Friday podcast, or I try to make it a Friday podcast. Mainly a weekly podcast, I hope, above anything. But, if there's something interesting that happens in the finals, I'll try to cover them as well. So right now we're in the quarterfinals. There's a few interesting things going on at this event so far. Francisco Cerundolo is still struggling. I don't know what's going on with him. Hopefully he gets it back because he's a guy who's been exciting, big forehand, stuff like that. Artur Fils lost to Lajovic, Dusan Lajovic. So many enforcers, just a bad match that you get now and again from a 19-year-old. It's fine. But Lajovic played great. Then the quarterfinals are Alcaraz taking on Vavasori, Echeverry taking on Jarry, two big clay court guys, Lajovic taking on Diaz Acosta, and Sebastian Baez taking on Coria. Two Argentines with great brothers, by the way. Baez taking on Coria, so that's always fun to see. In fact, Guillermo Coria was in the crowd there at Buenos Aires. I think he was watching Alcaraz when I was watching that. But Buenos Aires has been pretty interesting so far. The big match that I kind of got a chance to watch was Jarry taking on Wawrinka, the 100th win of Nicholas Jarry's career, which is great for him. I mean, listen, this is a guy who dropped out of the rankings for a couple of years. He fought his way back up. He won the Geneva Open last year in front of his grandfather, who was kind of managing the tournament, I believe. He used to be a professional player, so shout out Jarry. It's a great story with him, what he's been able to do now. He's not necessarily one of these youngest players like Alcaraz or Sinner, but he's playing some of the best tennis of his life. He's in the top 20 in the world, so he deserves it. And a great win, great stuff going on for him. He just narrowly saves a match point versus Stanislas Wawrinka and wins that match. Wawrinka had a great win against Pedro Kachin, actually. He lost the first set. He was down 0-1, 15-40 in that match, and then he had a great kind of backhand cross-court clean winner out of nowhere. Just a classic kind of stand backhand. Then from there, he was just so aggressive, raining down winners off both wings, serving pretty well too. And, from there on, I think he only lost like 2 games after that to Pedro Kachin, and that was his first win of 2024. Ending it off with a backhand signature down the line. I don't know how many more years we're going to be able to see Stan play, but I hope it's a lot. It's a guy I've been a fan of since 2010, 2011, whenever he beat Murray at the U.S. Open that one year. And then I knew that he had played Federer in doubles at Olympics, at Indian Wells, and I started following closer in singles. I watched his match against Federer in Shanghai 2012, and I was like, this is a guy who I think is going to rise up higher than wherever he is right now. And I was proven right, and I was happy to be proven right. I didn't think he would win 3 majors and become this kind of almost mythical kind of legacy player of the highest, such a high peak level, beating Djokovic in majors all the time. So I didn't expect that, but I was happy that he didn't stay in kind of Federer's shadow. But, he was a great player in his own right. And no, you can only, there are very, very few players, or no one really can be Federer. No one can be Federer. So, but it's good that he wasn't in his shadow and could stand out in his own right. So, Wawrinka here, he got broken 4 times out of 8 chances. He was serving just 53% of first serves in, winning just 52% of second serve points. Actually, funnily enough, exact same stats as his first match against Kachin. Against Kachin, he was winning 83% of his first serve points. Here it was less than that. And, just giving Jarry too many chances. It was just very clutch and good on the return. In the other match, he saved 5 out of his 5 break point chances. Here, he was only able to save 4 of 8. So that kind of told the story of the match. Also, Kachin just not able to attack the return as much and take his chances. But Stan had his chances, though. He broke early at 1-1. He was playing the better tennis overall, just raining down winners from everywhere. He served for the match of 5-4. It was a very quick break at love from Jarry's point of view. Very poor game from Stan. He had a match point as well. He couldn't put it away. He was actually up 3-5, 15-30. And it would seem like Stan was going to set up 2 match points with a very advantageous shot, surely setting up a winner. He was charging the net. And Jarry, from way back the court, hit a beautiful lob to not let Stan go up 2 match points, and that really could have been a turning point in that match. So very fine margins, and Jarry's so strong, very fun to watch at his best. He ended the match with a forehand winner inside out. That was a very tough shot anyway. He was kind of leaning back, going backwards, and a big roar to the crowd as a 100th career win, and good win for his confidence. He's been struggling this year, losing to weird players at Davis Cup or wherever. He almost lost to Sakalaritis, a kind of young Greek player at United Cup that went 7-5 in the 3rd set. He's never really found his range this year, so this is going to be good for his confidence. Very tough forehand when it's on, and a pretty complete player. So I hope to see him kind of moving up the rankings. I remember what his coach said, that he needs to make his weapons even stronger to face these top guys, and I agree with him. He's a complete player, but he just needs to keep making these weapons stronger and stronger and get the consistency. But yeah, Jarry, Wawrinka, sad for Wawrinka, just couldn't quite do it. I loved Juan Martín del Potro on Twitter saying saying that Wawrinka will get it next time, and he hates to see it and stuff. Very close loss, and to keep going and stuff. And Wawrinka said, "We miss you," and it's true. We miss Delpo, and that's just a big thing. I don't know if Del Potro is active or inactive. It seemed like he said that he just doesn't think that it's likely that he's going to come back now after he tried to come back for the U.S. Open next year. So I would pinpoint him as even inactive. But man, I miss Del Potro, and sad for Wawrinka. But yeah. Man, I miss Delpo. Anyway, that'll be it for this week's podcast. I'll be back for more videos throughout the week, whether I'm talking about this week's events or just anything that I want to talk about. I definitely want to put out a video, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast. I want to do a video on on some matches that I love, like Sinner Alcaraz US Open 2022, or even Federer Rafa matches or Novak Rafa, whatever it is. I'll be putting out more stuff, more videos about different topics and stuff going on, more podcasts as well. And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share around the podcast. It's now on Spotify, by the way. The podcast is now on Spotify. I'll try to get it on the other podcasting platforms as well. But yeah, I appreciate everybody who tunes in to me watching. I appreciate y'all. Just the start. Hopefully. And I'll be back with more. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe to Anthony Senesub. And yeah, more Delray Beach, more Rotterdam, more Buenos Aires coming up. I'll be watching. And I'll see you guys at the next podcast.